So I kind of wanted to keep that theme going today, to kind of talk about reflecting on wisdom of these graduates. You know, going to college graduations, you get a 18-year-old who is, you know, oftentimes a valedictorian, which means they spent the majority of their time studying, and they get up and they share, you know, the great wisdom that they have gained. And it's always a little kind of, you know, cookie cutter, you know, the same kind of thing you might expect anywhere. But these guys, we have something a little bit different. We have the senior mystery trip, which we just got back from last weekend. And we go out and we do different things. They don't know where we're going. They're just told to pack for the mountains, the beach, and the city, and for hot days and cold nights. So that's it. That's all they get. And, you know, I drop hints all year long, most of them misleading, about what we're doing. And at one point, the last night, we have a kind of a campfire ceremony. It's where they talk about their legacies, and they pass on kind of what they have learned, what they think is important to the incoming senior class. So it's the outgoing and incoming seniors to kind of pass on. This is what I've learned. This is what I think is important. This is what I encourage you to do. And so, out of their experiences, out of their wisdom, I was really impressed. They had a lot of very valuable insights, and I wanted to share some of those with you. Before I get to that, I wanted to point out that the class of 2012, they have different. You might be a child of the fill in the generation here. If you're a child of the 80s, you remember slap bracelets and neon clothes and Thundercats or something, stuff like that. So I was looking up you might be a class of the 2000s, a child of the 2000s if. I thought some of them were interesting. So you might be a member of the class of 2012 if you know and loved the sponge that lives in a pineapple under the sea. Seniors? Yeah? And you know every word to the SpongeBob SquarePants theme song. You might be a member of the class of 2012 if you lied about your age to have a Facebook or MySpace. You thought you were Beast, which means cool, when you perfected a Lil Wayne song and you knew the Soulja Boy dance by heart. You guys know what I'm talking about? Raise your hand if you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, right? This is weird. You might be a member of the class of 2012 if you played Guitar Hero and Rock Band until your fingers started cramping. If you watched all of the Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings movies. If your primary means of communicating with friends is by texting or instant messaging or Facebook. You might be a member of the class of 2012 if you never had a computer. These guys grew up having computers there, from as long as they can remember. You might be a member of the class of 2012 if you don't remember a simpler time at the airport. These guys were only 8 when 9/11 happened. And so it's a different world that they come out of. A lot of us can be like, I don't relate to any of those. I've never seen an episode of SpongeBob SquarePants, which is oftentimes met with incredulity. Is that a word, Craig? I think so. Incredulousness. And in spite of all the differences, a completely different world than many of you and I grew up in, we still find that there's a lot of similarities, that a lot of the things that they value, a lot of things that the wisdom that they pull out of their lives are things that we also value and have experienced. And even you see biblical heroes having experienced and gone through. And so from the senior mystery trip, as we sat around, we kind of shared their wisdom, their experiences, the things that they wanted to pass on. I pulled a few of them out for you. I wanted to share them with you because I think that there is a lot of wisdom there and things that we can all gain from that. So the first piece of advice that I wanted to share with you, is advice from grads number 1, is the question, who are you trying to impress? Live a life with meaning. So I want to invite you guys to close your eyes for a second and remember back to your high school days. All right? Close your eyes, visualize it, picture the front of your school, the smells, the sounds, the things people said. Remember how you felt, the things that you did, what you felt was important, what you thought was interesting. What are some of your memories? What stands out to you from high school? And grads, I'm not talking to you. World War II. Wow. What stands out? What was important to you in high school? Being part of the group, yeah. It's huge. Still is. Anybody else have something that really stood out to them? I wrote some things down. So you probably remember trying to fit in, hoping that the cool kids accepted you, and whatever made them cool, they just, I remember going to an elementary school and fitting in fine, and getting to junior high and all of a sudden realizing, oh man, it seems like everybody else knows everybody, and somehow someone decided some people are cool and some people aren't, and I'm not in the cool crowd. I'm like, how did that happen? A year ago, we were all playing on the playground together. You would do almost anything to fit in, and the fact is, nowadays, kids really will do almost anything to fit in. They'll sell out their values, their morals, and their integrity if it means gaining acceptance. The sad fact is, a year removed from high school, you're doing well if you still keep in touch with 10 people from high school. And really keep in touch. I'm not talking about Facebook, that's stalking. I'm talking about if you actually have conversations, you see people, you talk to people, you catch up. After a year removed from high school, when you're surrounded by all these people that you grew up with, if you're still keep talking to 10 of them, you're doing really well. And then by the time you graduate college, 3 more years later, if you're still in touch with 5, you're above average. And then for us who've been removed more than 5 years, how many people do we keep in touch with from high school? If we're lucky, several. Many of us, not many. Some of us, none. The point is, when we're in that time and we're in that space, we're so concerned with fitting in. We're so concerned with being accepted and being part of the in crowd that teens really will do anything to fit in for this very temporary, 3-year block of their lives. They'll do whatever it takes to fit in, and they'll miss out on a whole lot of important things. So the point of this is, if you think back to what you would do to fit in, even if you reach the pinnacle of popularity, so what? It's fleeting. A year from now, you only see a handful of those people again. So don't sell out on what you know is right in order to fit in. And we see that in the Bible too. There's lots of examples, but I just picked one for Daniel. In Daniel 1, you see that Daniel, his people have been taken captive by the Babylonians, and he's taken back, and he's in training as a captive in Babylonia. Babylonia? Yeah. And so if you check Daniel 1, 3-8, then the king ordered Ashpenaz, chief of his court officials, to bring into the king's service some of the Israelites from the royal family and the nobility, young men without any physical defect, handsome, showing aptitude for every kind of learning, well-informed, quick to understand, and qualified to serve in the king's palace. And he would teach them language and the literature of the Babylonians. It seems like Daniel had it all. He fit in, he was good-looking, he was smart, he was athletic, he was on the in crowd. If there's anybody who had, this would be fitting to keep your head down and just kind of, go with what you've been given, he's there. Additionally, by standing out, he risks, his life. But Daniel knew what was right and what was wrong, and he wasn't willing to compromise. So verse 5, the king assigned them a daily amount of food and wine from the king's table, and they were to be trained for 3 years, and after that they were to enter the king's service. Among those who were chosen were some from Judah, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine, and he asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself that way. Maybe not the biggest stand that you can imagine, but he still knew who he was trying to impress. He wasn't trying to impress the king. He wasn't trying to impress some court official. He was trying to impress his God, and he wasn't willing to sacrifice. He wasn't afraid to appear uncool in order to do it. He was unwilling to sell out on what he knew was right in order to fit in. Daniel risked everything, promotion, status, and even his life, because he was undeterred by the idea of impressing the wrong people. So the question for you is what are you not doing because you're held back by fear? And for me too, what am I not doing because I'm held back from fear? I don't get embarrassed easily. I don't have a problem going and starting a conversation up with a stranger on the street, especially someone who's needing help. But who are we trying to impress? Family, friends, a coworker, a boss? Basically, how could the kingdom be better if you were living more boldly? What's holding you back? For most of us, there are things that hold us back that are legitimate. Fear, risking being fired if you act inappropriately with your regards to your religion in the workplace. Those are understandable, but are they legitimate? In the end, it's only God's opinion that matters. You can't serve two masters. So the first thing that they shared that I thought was good wisdom was to consider who you're trying to impress. Live your life with meaning. The second piece of advice they shared was set priorities. Don't waste your time. A classic and often misused tool in youth ministry goes something like this. You tell everybody to sort how they spend their time, and then everything that's you give more time to than God is labeled an idol. Now, there's a lot of fallacies with that. Then immediately sleeping, school become idols, eating, and I guess depending on how much time you spend, putting God first. Lots of other things. Washing your hair could become an idol. So that's not really I think, an effective tool. But there may be some value. When it comes down to it, we do have a finite amount of time. Every moment spent has an opportunity cost. By doing one thing, there are many, many things that we don't do, that we can't do. So it follows that when you sit in front of a TV for 4.5 hours, which is what some studies say the average child under the age of 18 is spending daily on watching TV. So if you sit in front of a TV for 4.2 hours, but you don't have time to read the Bible or to spend some quiet time with God, then perhaps you are worshiping the TV more than God. Or, I guess more relative to me, it's not so much the TV, but it's kind of the indulgence of just relaxing, of vegging out for a little while, putting my feet up, just the comfort of sitting underneath a fan with the remote on and not having any responsibilities. But in which case, when I do that, maybe I'm worshiping myself. Maybe I'm putting myself, my selfishness, my laziness, whatever, ahead of God. So then how should we spend our time? I can list off all sorts of ways, both religious and secular. Get to know a neighbor, call an old friend, volunteer at the local public school, take Sabbath. That's God's gift to us, a day that we're supposed to relax. But I would guess very few of us do. Serve, engage in fellowship, have a Bible study, do quiet time, worship, write encouragement notes. We can go on and on. All these things are good. But even better than them being good, these things matter. They make lasting differences. And in some cases, they make eternal differences. Years from now, no one will care how the House series finale went. No one will care who won this past year's American Idol or Dancing with the Stars. And I actually cared so little I didn't even bother Googling that to see what the answer was. Years from now, how much will it matter that the Giants won the World Series? I bet you can name someone, though, did I hurt some people there? Sorry. I bet you can name someone who helped you in the past. I bet you can think of someone who, maybe adults, maybe there's an elderly person who sat you down just to kind of share their life and their wisdom with you. Young adults, maybe an older adult, when you're fresh out of college, sat you down to share, just their life and wisdom and, or just buy you dinner. College students, maybe you can remember as a college student someone, who's just out, talk about getting jobs and living on your own and what that's like. In high school, as a freshman, you can remember that senior who took the time to know your name and say hi to you and how much that meant. As a junior hire, as a lowly junior hire, that freshman, that high schooler that took the time to say hi to you at church or wherever. Little things that just make a world of difference. Do you all, raise your hand if you've got someone that just immediately pops to your mind as someone who made a significant difference in your life just by, yeah. And it was easy. It's not like I'm guessing most of these things, it's not like they built you a house or bought you a car. Most of these cases, in my case, it was just, a guy from church who I thought was